I'm sure you guys are familiar with a little series called Epic Rap Battles of History, where two fictional or historical characters face off against each other with stylistic verbal attacks, otherwise known as rapping. It has inspired some imitators, some of which are just as good if not better than ERB, like Hurrokane, and others.
Your cartoon might be popular, but your ratings are fart.
What others? However, there is one very important question to the subject of ERB imitators. What if Skylanders were involved? A passion project created by my good friends Do and Simptide, Epic Rap Battles of Skylands does what you expect. Put two Skylanders characters in a rap battle. It's one of my personal favorite ERB imitators because, well, while I wait patiently for the tomorrow show, hopefully soon bring season 2, today I want to shine a light on this awesome series by ranking the entirety of season 1, going from my personal least favorite to favorite. Some ground rules before we begin: the creativity of the lyrics, editing, backing tracks, and my overall enjoyability of these rap battles will all be factors to the overall ranking. Despite being a bonus episode, I'm going to be also including Fire Viper vs the Leviathan. It just gives me another opportunity to raise this series to high heaven. There are some spoilers, oddly enough, so if you're interested, watch every episode first before continuing on with this video. And last and most obvious of all, this video is my personal opinion. Enough of the deliberation, let's hip-hop into the countdown.
Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
Cobra Kadabra vs Rattleshake is by no means Adam vs Eve levels of terrible, but despite the matchup being a cool concept, the final product is really something to be left desired, with Rattleshake being not bad but relatively standard, while the other half showcases, in my opinion, the worst parts in Epic Rap Battles of Skylands in terms of execution with Cobra Kadabra. First, the elephant, or shall I say, python, in the room.
Charmed and ready.
Considering how most of these battles are only made by Do and Simptide, I'm happy to give some form of leeway in terms of voice acting, but Simptide goes for a generic, deep, distorted voice for Cobra Kadabra, rather than actually making an attempt to even mimic the accent this kinda had, which, as a result, makes his rap very muffled and hard to hear, which, barring the Python's puny line, kills any enjoyment. Even if the voice impersonation was a lot better, MCCC over here has some of my least favorite lines in the series. "So I feel upon you, my mothers will not work this time" is such a self-destruct line, it's almost unbelievable. Fortunately, his opponent Rattleshake saves his battle a bit with more creative insults and rhymes, along with this portion of a backing track being more enjoyable, with the use of a sample from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly to really nail down the Western vibe he is meant to represent. But he still heavily pales in comparison to some of the other Skylanders on this list. Backgrounds are also really nothing special. While I enjoy Gulch at least fits well with Rattleshake, the most interesting thing about them is that random Skylanders and characters introduced in both rappers' respective games float around, and it's really random as they don't contribute much to the video at all. Rattleshake vs Cobra Kadabra is overall quite mediocre. Believe me when I say this, but even the show's creators agree with me with this episode's placement on this list. But fortunately, from here on out, it's onwards and upwards.
Quality over quantity. That's our lesson here.
This is probably my hottest take in the entire video, but although it excels on the editing front, Spyro vs Kingpin is honestly one of my lesser enjoyed episodes. It has its highs, very high highs no doubt, but the lows it does have are very crushing lows. The root of most of its problems come from the fact that it tries to replicate the style of Joseph Stalin vs. Rasputin, in the fact that every once in a while a new rapper enters the fray, in this case, another starter pack Skylander from a different game. But what doesn't work is that there is a severe imbalance between each of the Skylanders verses during the video. For example, T-Rex has my favorite verse in the video, thanks to some great dizzes, awesome editing, and a climactic and imposing rhythm to boot. But then you get Kingpin. Awesome that HGTV voices him, but the disses barely amount to anything due to him being just limited to Spyro in order to have the fact that the other starter pack Skylanders have a verse. Additionally, as a result of Spyro and Kingpin starting the battle, the pair gets the brunt of the disses by the other Skylanders, some of which are just an alteration of the same joke, while Spitfire only really gets dissed 2 separate times by Snapshot and T-Rex respectively, the latter of which is almost unintelligible. Despite these issues, the battle never runs out of steam. There are some super creative lines in each verse, Kingpin notwithstanding, and as I alluded to earlier, the editing is a highlight, from the intro having Spyro's flames still flowing after the use of his Soul Gem footage, Washbuckler's text borders looking like pirate scrolls, or the slick transitions of Snapshot's verse. Spyro vs. Kingpin is a fun battle, but the other episodes accomplish way more with certainly less Skylanders.
Watch your back when in rival hoods. They'll test just to guess if your survival's good.
Hell yeah, now we're getting somewhere. Hoodsickle vs. Enigma marks the point of a series where the editing took a real leap in quality, and for this battle specifically to communicate an ominous vibe matching the mysterious designs of the Skylanders featured, from the applications of some certain filter effects to further expanding the use of keyframes, etc, etc. On the topic of ominous and mysterious vibes, Simptide's performance as Hoodsickle is worthy of mention. The deep voice only fits Hoodsickle a lot better, but the extra added vocal effects makes his verses a lot more imposing too. As for the verses themselves, Hoodsickle has some real killer lines, and both of Hoodsickle's closers definitely seals him as the winner of the battle, in my personal opinion at least.
Can't come around my hood, cause what we do to magic, tragic.
While I feel Enigma is the lesser of the two, he is no slouch either. Dur's more sinister voice acting works well enough, and his elemental gate diss, along with the sections where he traps Hoodsickle on a small island with sentient eyes following and watching him, is, for me personally, a stunning highlight of the editing in the series. The only major thing I could fault in this battle is the beat, which, even then, fits the mood perfectly. I just think that some part of the piano sticks out and it can come across as a little goofy, and more fitting for a low-budget horror game in the 90s. Regardless, although not my favourite, Enigma vs. Hoodsickle is a fantastic entry to the series that would influence later episodes to come.
Bounds round!
Despite being a bonus episode testing the waters of After Effects editing for future episodes, I still opted to include Fire Viper vs. Leviathan because it's definitely one of the more unique episodes of the series. It breaks the mold of having 2 Skylanders rap battling, and instead having 2 major bosses in the game, of course that being the Leviathan and the Fire Viper. If we're talking voice acting, this one definitely wins. Both characters are largely unvoiced in the Skylanders games, so both Dur and Simptide take this opportunity to really expand their personalities, with Dur putting a raspy tone with a medium intonation to really fit the Fire Viper's reptilian design, while Simptide opts for a more deeper and aggressive growling voice, both being fantastic ways to differentiate these characters.
Get close and you'll be scattered like soul gems in your level. Feel the best of chaos minions. I think that Dasher is fine.
I can't say the same for the animation, since it's very clear that the entire video is a tech demo for After Effects with a singular drawn PNG of both contestants flying around. There are some creative keyframing that is utilized for the Leviathan, and its background is awesome, but the Fire Viper looks a little weird due to his artwork only detailing the top half of his body, and his background is plain and largely uninteresting. But let me tell you what isn't uninteresting: the lyrics. There are so many great disses to pick out from, and ones which really roll off the tongue. Special mention goes to Fire Viper's second verse, which is one of my favorites in the series thanks to Dur's excellent delivery, but Leviathan overall won this battle for me as he simply has more punchier and hilarious lines. Fire Viper vs. Leviathan is a battle that I am sure would have large influences in upcoming battles, and for a bonus episode, it goes really hard.
You know the drill.
Next, we have a true hood classic for the gangster generation, Drill Sergeant vs Chop Chop. This battle is far for a couple of reasons, and no, it's not just because my beloved Drill Sergeant features in this battle. No, totally not bad. I'm not biased. Maybe. Being the first ever battle in the series, some aspects have aged considerably. The editing is nowhere near as insane as other battles, and Drill Sergeant's second verse, though with some merit, is sometimes muffled at certain points. But for a first episode, it hits the ground running with establishing the series' witty writing with deep-cut references to the Skylanders games. Drill Sergeant's first verse remains a favourite of mine, as it's catchy and rhythmic with lots of good disses, in addition to having a great flow for the most part. Chop Chop's lines are mostly basic, but super effective in dissing Drill Sergeant, and the addition of the Archean enemies getting their own extra verse was a surprise, but a nice and welcome one, and it ties in further with the theme of the video. Throw in a creative hip-hop remix of Archean Armory, and for epic rap battle of Skyland's first video, it succeeds in everything it aimed to do, and after all this time, it is still a blast to rewatch. Next on the list is Slobbertooth versus the Mighty Kevin. Only one person in my audience will get that joke. Of all the Season 1 battles, this one gets the least views, and it's a real crime too, because it has a great backing track that captures the essence of both earth and air elements, atmospheric backgrounds, and really creative editing choices, like using Slobbertooth's animations to eat Tornado, or Slobbertooth driving in some sort of racing video game. Slobbertooth's verses are good, but sometimes they can be a little lost in translation due to the deep vocal effect, but at least it fits the character this time around. My favourite Slobbertooth line is definitely the little wordplay he does at the end of his final verse, though personally throughout the video, I was rooting for Tornado. Durr's voice work makes him come across as a more professional and experienced Skylander to contrast Slobbertooth's more arrogant and prudish portrayal, and of the two, I definitely believe Tornado has the stronger disses, with references to the low popularity of Slobbertooth as a Skylander, even mentioning the famous discount bash joke, as well as a rather clever line referencing both Slobbertooth's backstory and the beam-up gameplay style Skylanders are best known for. I don't have much criticism for this episode. It's a true underrated gem, and one extremely worth checking out.
Beef with a sheath and no, and Blofeld with a cheek scar, but they were not as crooked and rotten as your teeth are.
Spyrise vs Dr. Crankcase is the most well-rounded of epic rap battle of Skyland's catalogue. It's a classic through and through, with the techno backing track being especially memorable with its main lead motif of ba 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 ba, and the use of Crankcase's theme phone in there, with its respective verses and lyrics are mixed in super well, and you can hear the cadences of both the voices Simptide and Durr provide. As an Englishman myself, I believe Durr does an admirable attempt at doing a vague, posh British accent for Spyrise. However, Simptide steals the show with his voice for Crankcase, which is scarily almost accurate to how he sounds in the games. The writing of the battle is fantastic. Both contestants have a lot of neat little jabs towards each other. Such examples are the ending of Spyrise's first verse being a hilarious example referencing the infamous Skylanders fan art often seen in DeviantArt, and it works well as an effective kill line, along with Crankcase's line in his first verse related to how the Swap Force got their ability in the first place, calling it Spyrise's biggest achievement. It's brilliant. For one critique I could say about the writing is the overabundance of disappeared dad jokes, which get kind of a bit stale come Crankcase's second verse, which is one of the reasons why I personally think Spyrise was ultimately the stronger of the two contestants. This episode is not as ambitious as others in the series, but for what it does, it excels.
Slam Bam slips, Peter dips, poorly made with Chumpy Mage.
Our runner-up today goes to the absolutely superb Wildstorm vs Robo. This video takes the lessons learned from Hoodsickle vs Enigma and dials it up to 11. The editing is snappy and engaging to really make the battle come alive. Instead of having a background correspond to a Skylander's level, instead they tie metaphorically based on the attributes of a Skylander. For example, Wildstorm's background is a medieval castle on a windy day to represent how Wildstorm is a Night-class sensei in the air element, while Robo has a digital black screen with code as if the background is Robo's own processor. There are even neat little visual setups to Chompy Mage's guest appearance. Robo's second verse features Wildstorm beat up a Chompy and his dead body is found by Chompy Mage, as well as Wildstorm's second verse knocking Robo into Chompy Mage's background. It's little scenes like that that really builds up to Chompy Mage's verse. who, I gotta be honest, has my least favorite verse in the battle, only because most of his disses are just threats and nothing really to properly refer to a Skylanders backstory or moveset, but it's still super enjoyable, and Simptide comes in swinging with a spot-on impression of Chompy Mage, and his verse still has some pretty darn good wordplay. The main battle itself is superb. Considering how Wildstorm and Robo were the last two Skylanders ever released, it's impressive how many great disses are included, like Why Am I Rapping B When He Can't Speak English, referencing Robo's internet slang speech pattern, and Am I Finding a Hero or Rugrat Murderer, referencing Wildstorm's more morally dubious backstory. Durr also differentiates both characters so well, with Wildstorm having a deeper growling voice, though not too low pitched and we can still hear his cadence, and Robo having a more uppity and arrogant tone, combined with a semi-robotic voice filter. I also think the beat is super well done, and it takes more influences from the traditional epic rap battles of history style, with how the track slightly alters depending on what verse it is. I especially love the change in sims for Robo's verses.
Well, what's that a verse? I don't have ears, but that verse hurt physically, not mentally, of course.
Wildstorm vs. Robo reached the true potential of what Season 1 had to offer. Robo and Wildstorm may be expensive, but hey, at least I'll have the pleasure in always enjoying this episode for free.
It's the professional rapper himself.
Snapshot vs. Buckshot. Rap battle so awesome, Winston Churchill rose from the grave to advertise it. Ever since I first watched it, it has remained my personal favorite epic rap battles of Skylands, which is quite a big feat considering how the features of the episode were decided through fan polls, with decisions that seemed very unplausible. From the verses being extra long, to the use of less prominent instruments like bagpipes and the womola. Whatever the hell a womola is, I'm probably pronouncing it incorrectly. But with what was given, somehow the mad genius in ERBoS took those requested concoctions and make it work so well. The beat is very distinctive thanks to the peculiar and unique instrumentals used, which fuses together to make something along the lines of a techno beat with some medieval influences, which coincidentally fits with the Archer theme of the battle, and the editing still remains fluid, so no notes there. At this point, my praises for the lyrics are getting a bit repetitive, but bear with me here. I love how well most of the lyrics flow together while having effective punchlines for each contestant, like "This salty won't be salty, one time verbal assaulting as compacted you down into a trophy," or "Water Element Trap Team, you're a distraction, the words once were worse, now that's a chain reaction." Snapshot has a great first verse, though the aforementioned second verse brings him down slightly, while Buckshot has consistently great rhymes with effective rebuttals to Snapshot's own disses. However, my favorite verse in the entire series has to go to the guest appearance of Flameslinger, who just steps in and completely annihilates the competition, not only with a more aggressive backing track, but also with his disses, which go even more extreme than his opponents, like making fun of Buckshot's scrapped Heartless variant through the general high prices of senseis, and Snapshot's true futility as leader of the trap team. Other flaws? Yeah, no video is perfect. Sometimes Buckshot can be hard to understand. Snapshot's second verse barely disses Buckshot, which was even lampshaded by Buckshot afterwards, and the backgrounds are just simply outdoor areas, which don't fit in with Buckshot in particular. But considering its duration of 5 minutes, it's such a fast-paced wild ride from beginning to end that you probably would be too busy enjoying yourself to notice these issues. Snapshot vs. Buckshot is my personal favorite epic rap battles of Skylands episode, and I don't see that changing for a long time. Sadly, we have reached the end of this video, but which epic rap battles of Skylands episode is your favorite? And if you're curious or intrigued to see the show, then make sure to check them out. I'm open to any opinions. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video.